Hello, my name is Susanda Henda and you're watching Open Studio on Cape Town TV. Today I've got a wonderful guest, Pulang Puku from Breadline Africa. Now, Breadline Africa is an amazing organization that converts old shipping containers into safe havens for young children and youth. Welcome, Pulang.
Thank you, Susanda.
All right, so can you please tell us a bit more about Breadline? I mean, I already said it in the introduction, but just give us briefly a bit more of exactly what Breadline is.
So I have to take you 25 years back because that's how old Breadline Africa is. And I'm looking at a mural behind there. I'm not sure if your viewers can see it. And that's exactly how Breadline Africa started. I see the words harmony, peace, community, togetherness, empowerment. That's how Breadline Africa started. It started as a charity organization going into impoverished communities and uplifting individuals and doing everything and anything in order to empower and enhance poorer communities.
Okay.
That's how Breadline Africa started.
Okay, so what is your primary goal then? And how do you go about achieving it?
Sure. So, so from moving on from the charity organization, Breadline Africa a couple of years back decided to focus strictly on infrastructure. Still focusing on impoverished communities. And I have to paint this picture for you because I think you'll better understand who Breadline Africa is. If you think Kailicha, 2 million, a population of 2 million, shack upon shack upon shack upon shack. And there are hundreds, probably thousands of women that are unemployed living in Kailicha. They see children running the streets, and they decide to bring these children into their homes and look after these children while the parents are out looking for work or at work. But the environment that they're looking after these children is not necessarily the safest, it's not necessarily the securest. It is a shack, if you think of it. There's probably one toilet for, say, 20, 30 children. So issues of health and safety become a concern. And we come and place a fully refurbished container classroom, say for example, much safer, securer, and a woman that's running an EC, Early Childhood Development Center, in a shack is more worried about the structural problems, the wind blowing the shack, the rain leaking into the shack. And she's not so much focused on the educational and the developmental aspects of the children because she's worried about the security and the safety of the children. And we place a fully refurbished container that she can now use as a classroom, and her focus is entirely now on developing and educating these children. A total mind shift. And so we say we enhance the work that is already happening in these communities by just placing proper infrastructure for these women.
But how did this ingenious idea come about? Yes, it's there, but who thought of this and who put it all together?
Yeah, so I certainly wasn't there at the time.
Yes.
But I can imagine that, listen, you know, we live by the ocean, we live by the sea, we live by the harbor. There's all these containers that are sitting there. So at the time, our first container, a container was donated to us. And obviously the thought was, why not convert this container into usable infrastructure for someone who might need that? And the idea just spurred on from there. And so that's what we do. We provide safe infrastructure for early childhood development centers and as libraries for primary schools.
Yes, so you kind of briefly touched on the question I was going to follow up with. You cater to you divide your project into 3 different clusters: libraries, and early childhood centers, as well as special community activities as well. So can you please just go into more detail what each of the clusters?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right there. We've got libraries that we provide to primary schools, and then we've got the classrooms, the toilets and kitchens, which we provide for early childhood development centers. And then we've also got campaigns that allow us to raise funds All of these structures that we provide are actually donations. So we raise funds for us to be able to donate the containers. And then we've got campaigns that allow us to raise funds. So we've got the seaside outing, that it's an annual seaside outing. We recruit our beneficiaries, so our infrastructure beneficiaries, children that have benefited from the containers. We bring them to the seaside. Some of them have never been to the sea, and yet they're living in the Western Cape. So it's quite an outing, it's a big thing. And actually it allows us to raise a lot of funds. We've also got other campaigns. We've got the Christmas food campaign. We've got the winter feeding campaign. We've got the stationery campaign. And it's just raising funds for us to be able to donate stationery to a school that actually needs stationery. So we would do that in January. During the winter months, we would do the winter feeding campaign, and we'll donate food hampers, blankets if there's need for that, whatever we've been able to get that we think will benefit a specific community that we select.
Thank you so much, Puleng. Let's go to a quick ad break. Back after these. Welcome back. You're in Open Studio and we're chatting to Puleng from Breadline Africa. So we've been having this wonderful conversation from the break. Previously, before the break, we were talking about the different clusters that Breadline Africa covers. I'm really interested about the libraries that you guys create. Run us through the whole project. Who decides it's going to be, is this a community call or is it something, you know, the organization decides? How are the books collected? I mean, who works in these libraries? Is it community run? Do the children that use, or the youth as well that use these spaces, are they involved in the upkeep? Tell us more, please.
So the libraries project started in 2011. At the time, we had partnered with the Nelson Mandela Foundation. And how we met with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, we were donating a container library to a school that was turning 91, and it was the year that Mandela was also turning 91, if I'm not mistaken. And we bumped into the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and they liked the idea of the container library, and that's how the partnership started. And we started donating container libraries to primary schools. So our offices are here in Cape Town, but we work nationally. And the applications came from every province you can think of. So we deliver nationally. Now, the libraries, first of all, a school that applies for a library, we feel like they really do want a library. There is a need for a library, and they really do want a library. For them to have gone through that effort to apply for a library. Our criteria is quite strict in terms of what we look for. We want to see that the school has a literacy development organization existing on site that helps the school learners with literacy development, reading initiatives, anything that allows the library to be used. That is when we'll place a library at a school. Previously, we would have wanted to see that a teacher oversees the management and the daily running of the library. But we've come to realize that teachers are not only overwhelmed by their own teaching responsibilities, but that they really don't have the time, and they struggle to make the time for the library. We found different ways that the library can be used, and different schools use the library in different ways, and we're not really strict about how the library is used, as long as the library is used. Some of the partners that we have a partnership with that work on site with the schools have their different interventions with the school. So we're quite happy with however way they work, as long as they use the library. We want to understand how many children are accessing the library. It might be that reading initiatives are run in the library or not in the library. It might just be that children go into the library, select their books, and loan them for a week, 2 weeks, however long, it's really up to the school to decide how they want to use the library. But we're very strict on the literacy development organization that exists on the school. We want to see a partner organization at the school.
Do you expect report backs from the schools?
We do. We because we rely on donors. We need to report back to the donors on how the library is being used. So we do 6 monthly reports. But even the reporting, we also rely on the partner organization reports. So how they report, we just tap into those reports. Because we just place the infrastructure. We don't do the interventions on site. We just place the infrastructure. We cannot really dictate how the implementing partners are implementing the initiatives at the school. We do appreciate that they're involved at the school. Yeah, and there's a whole host of these organizations that exist nationally in different provinces, doing different things, and we're always looking for other partners. So yeah, we rely largely on the partner organizations. Now, the partner organizations will also refer us to schools that are in need, that they're already working in, that they see that this school actually needs space to use as a library. So they will refer these schools to us, and we will in turn raise funds for that library and place the library at their selected school. Mm-hmm. Books has been possibly one of the biggest challenges. Initially, when we started the project, we got individuals to donate, but we received all sorts of books. Some of them we had to throw out.
Not appropriate.
It's just a messy activity, and we decided that we would kind of remove ourselves a little bit away from the books. So we also rely on the partner organizations to provide books. Some of them produce their own books in indigenous languages. Some of them have other organizations that donate to them so that they can run their initiatives in the schools. So books, we largely rely on the partner organizations to support us, to support the schools with.
Wow. I mean, I'm already thinking about so much if you're working with new writers and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But to date, you've actually done 131 containers, classrooms for schools, and 100, I think, and 100 libraries. I mean, looking at these achievements, what does it feel like? And firstly, how did you even achieve that?
I'm not sure I can answer that, Susanna. I ask myself the same question as well every day. Yeah, I mean, it's through hard work, it's through commitment. You should see my colleagues, they're the most committed individuals ever. And we're always striving for the best, you know. There's a fundraising department.
Puleng, I am going to have to interrupt you. Let's continue after the break with this conversation. See you after the break. Thank you. Welcome back to Open Studio. I'm still chatting to Puleng. So before the break, we were talking about all the containers we've managed to convert into spaces for young people. I spoke about the 100 libraries that you've managed to do through the shipping containers, as well as the 131 classes you've managed to also build. Yeah, would you like to brief us more on those?
Well, so in total, we've placed 450 structures in toilet. These are all toilets, classrooms, kitchens, libraries. But for me, these numbers speak to the need out there. It means there is great need out there. The 100 libraries that we've placed, it means there's great need for libraries in primary schools. The classrooms that we place in ECD centers, it just speaks to the need. The toilets that we place in these ECD centers, it just speaks to the need. There is great need out there. And what we can just do is continue raising funds and trying to place as many structures as we possibly can. All of these numbers just speak to the need that is out there. And the fact that Breadline Africa has been able to sustain itself for 25 years, as a PBO, means that not only are we, I'm patting myself on the back yet, but are we doing a great deed to our communities, but the need is out there. There is a need out there, and we're just meeting the need. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
So Breadline Africa, although it's called Africa, it doesn't only exist in Africa. You have branches in Netherlands, Ireland, and the UK as well. How has having branches in those areas been able to assist with projects right here in South Africa?
So the implementation happens in the South African office. The initiatives happen in the South African office. UK, Ireland, Netherlands are our fundraising offices.
Okay.
Because we've got individual donors in those countries. So largely in the UK, we've got an older generation of individuals that donate on a monthly basis through debit order. They're €10, £5, however much they are able to afford on a monthly basis. And that's exactly how, Breadline Africa has been able to sustain itself for all these years. It's through those fundraising offices in those countries. Although the funding streams have in the past couple of years withered down, because that generation is actually literally dying off with that culture. The younger generation is not as giving. We've had to revert back to South Africa to seek funds from the South African community, South African corporates, individuals, and that's where we are right now. We're approaching corporates, South African corporates and individuals to support the work that we're doing, and we've been successful. And I do want to thank those organizations, those companies that have come on board, and those individuals that continue to support us in South Africa. They're literally building their own communities.
It's nice. So in a sense, it can be a fully African experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the one thing you can get out of it, that, we Africans, we can do for ourselves as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to go back to the beginning in 1995. That was the first successful project of the shipping containers.
Yeah.
I know you were not there when this all happened, but I'm sure it's been archived somewhere and you've heard about it.
Yeah.
I mean, of what you know, can you please tell us, because it sounds really exciting, of what happened then?
So our first container beneficiary was a soup kitchen in Mitchell's Plain. I'm not going to name the name of the organization, but it's still in existence right now. The container is still there.
Oh, wow.
It was a 6-meter container kitchen, and the need at the time, so this family was feeding their own surrounding community as frequently as they could, with donations, of course. But they were feeding them from their home. And the logistics of feeding a bigger number from your house, it just becomes crazy. So a container allowed them to have dedicated space to be able to cook in that container and not have to be shuttling big pots from one point to another, from the home to another point, but for that to be the focal point where feeding happens. The container is still there. It's not in the best of conditions, but it's still thriving. And the project has grown into an early childhood development center. It's not just feeding the community that happens there. And that just speaks to the longevity of these containers as well. We have a library in Kalk Bay that has been in existence for 20 odd years in a primary school, and it's still functioning as a library today. It's certainly our oldest library, and we're proud, we're proud that we have these structures that are out there that have sustained, the elements and are still going strong. So we do pride ourselves in our work, and I think it's the smiles that you receive not only from the children that you bump into at these centers, but the caregivers themselves, the fact that we've been able to enhance the work that they're already doing and to put them a notch higher towards accessing services from the Department of Social Development, or other organizations that assist them and help them and to build them and to become, you know, legitimate and formal organizations in their own communities.
Can you briefly tell us how we can connect with Breadline Africa should we be interested?
Yeah. In terms of emails, we have info@breadlineafrica.org.za. Breadline Africa is our website, www.breadlineafrica.co.za. On our website, we also have the application form. So if you're looking for a library, classroom, whatever your need may be, we have an application form. You can download it, fill it out, and send it back to us. We have a Twitter handle, and yeah, our number is 021-418-0322.
Puleng, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for coming to Open Studio. And thank you to you, the viewer, for watching us. This is Susana Henda signing off on Open Studio. Thank you.